Our top focus this hour, Germany has urged France to boost its defense spending to make European self-sufficiency a reality soon. While European countries are facing pressure to enhance their defense capabilities as anxiety increases about whether Washington would use its military might to come to the aid of its NATO partners. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephil, however, said that Europe cannot defend itself without the US. Not just that, he even highlighted that sticking with the US is the only realistic option and that China isn't an alternative. Wadephil also had some bad news for Ukraine. The German foreign minister said that Berlin has effectively run out of its own stocks of air defense missiles and can no longer supply them to Ukraine directly from its own reserves. He additionally noted that Patriot interceptors that Berlin has come straight off the production line in the US, while adding that everything coming off that line is going directly to Ukraine under a mechanism that is largely financed by Europeans and to a large extent by Germany alone. He also urged other countries, the European Union countries, to contribute more. The Ukraine support report by Kiel Institute for the World Economy shows that while Washington has reduced its contribution by up to 99%, European countries noticeably increased theirs, largely compensating for the shortfall. Also, European military aid rose by as much as 67% above the average for the years between 2022 till 2024, while non-military aid has increased by 59%. According to the data within Europe, Germany was the largest single donor state in military aid last year. Berlin provided over $10.5 billion. In addition to Germany, other major contributors include UK with about $6.5 billion and Sweden with about $4.5 billion. The debate over defense spending and US-European ties comes as Ukraine and Russia are meeting in Geneva for a fresh round of US-mediated peace talks. The Kremlin says that talks are likely to focus on land, which has been the main sticking point between Russia and Ukraine. And joining us to discuss more on the latest friction point between the two countries and also the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine is Ross Cullen, who's joining us live from Paris. We also have Zachary Pakin. He's Research Fellow at Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. He's also joining us live. Thank you both for joining us on the broadcast. Ross, coming first straight to you. German Foreign Minister has called on France to increase its defense funding. This comes at a time when France has been struggling with its debt crisis. Can the defense funding be raised at this juncture, and where does this essentially put the France-Germany friction over military aid and spending?
Well, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has made increasing defence funding an important part of his plans for this year, also announcing the start of a voluntary national military service for 18 and 19-year-olds that will be starting this summer. Certainly a lot of focus continued on trying to build up defence capacities in European countries, at the same time as they are trying to support Ukraine, which is facing the next round of talks in the Swiss city of Geneva today. The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the son-in-law of the president, Jared Kushner, will be there representing the US for these trilateral discussions between Moscow, Kiev and Washington. And we understand that land is still going to be one of the key positions. We've heard Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump say in the past that they do believe 90 to 95% of the issues are solved. It all comes down to these contested areas in the east of Ukraine, land which is recognized by the UN as Ukrainian, which the Russians would like to see Ukraine give up, but Ukraine has suggested potentially it could form part of a demilitarized free economic zone, an idea to try to get the US on board with that. But we do know that speaking on Air Force One on Monday, the US President Donald Trump did say that Ukraine better get to the table pretty fast if it wants to make a deal.
Yes, Ross, requesting you to stay with us. Let's take that same point across to Dr. Zachary, who is live with us from Geneva. Dr. Zachary, all eyes will be on the third round of talks that will be mediated by the US, of course. Kremlin has minced absolutely no words in stating that land will be the area of focus. In your opinion, can we expect any major breakthrough when neither side has been willing to relent as far as land gains during the war is concerned?
I don't expect any major breakthroughs this week, but nonetheless, we are seeing gradual progress in the talks. Most recently, we saw trilateral talks take place in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, in which the focus was more technical on how to implement and monitor a ceasefire, for example, in the event that a framework agreement to end the conflict is reached. Now the talks need to move, and they are moving, from the technical level to a more political level. It's going to take some time to arrive at the necessary creativity and to forge the necessary political will to move forward to ensure that that an agreement can be reached on these sticking points. But as was just mentioned, this is the way negotiations work. The major issues are dealt with first. The sticking points are what's left. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And I should hope that in the coming months we should see a final resolution to this conflict, which would be in the interest of all parties, not just Russia and Ukraine, but also Europe and the United States, because the prolongation of this war for another year or another two could cause the war to evolve and to escalate in ways that are very difficult to control or to predict.
Yes. Dr. Zachary, point taken. I'll come across to you in just a bit. Let's go across to Ross again. Ross, coming back to the earlier point, the friction points as we were discussing, German foreign minister also said that Europe cannot defend itself without the US. How is this statement being viewed by French ministers at large, as it comes just days after Macron even warned threats and intimidation by the US are not over yet?
Well, I think that European leaders broadly welcomed the change in tone from the Trump administration at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, where the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio made an appearance that was far less combative than the speech that was made by the US Vice President J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference in 2025. So they are certainly welcoming that change in tone, but they are aware of the fact that the anniversary is coming up, the 4-year anniversary of the start of what Russia describes as the special military operation, what the United States and Ukraine and Europe see as a war and an invasion. That started on the 24th of February 2022, and so there will be another anniversary to mark as this conflict continues. They will be trying to find a way forward at this latest round of trilateral negotiations to see if they can narrow the positions between Moscow and Kiev.
Yes, Ross, thank you for giving us all those insights. We will keep coming back to you to get your more updates on the talks in Geneva. Let's quickly take a word from Dr. Zachary as well. Dr. Zachary, German foreign minister, has categorically said that Berlin has effectively run out of its own stocks of air defense missiles and that it can no longer supply them to Ukraine directly from its reserves. Your quick thoughts on that?
Well, this is a significant concern that all sides are going to be facing, which is time on whose side? Is time on Ukraine's side or is time on Russia's side? And right now, both parties have reason to believe that time is on their side with greater or lesser degrees of justification. But nonetheless, that exists. And as long as both sides think that time is on their side, it's going to make a compromise very difficult. I think this is a concern not just for Germany. This is a concern for the United States, I should add as well. By the way, that this war should not, continue for so long to the point where it makes the United States be put into a difficult position where it doesn't necessarily have the resources necessary to respond to various contingencies around the globe, which only favors, from the United States perspective, a negotiated settlement that brings this war finally to an end.
Yes, Dr. Zachary, point taken, and of course remains to be seen what essentially comes out of the talks. But for now, Kremlin making it absolutely clear that the focus will be on land concession in the talks that are to take place in Geneva.